Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're deeply unpacking the mechanics of emotional dysregulation using a really fascinating framework from our source module. It's called Inside the Mind of the Emotionally Explosive. Look, if you've ever been on the receiving end of a sudden outburst, or hey, maybe you've struggled with overwhelming reactions yourself, the insights we're going to explore today are absolutely crucial. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, the source material hits us with a pretty jarring question. What's wrong with these people? Ouch, right? It's a harsh way to put it, but honestly, we have to acknowledge it because it perfectly captures that raw, unfiltered frustration you feel when you're dealing with someone who's emotionally explosive. I mean, when metaphorical plates are flying across the room, what is wrong with you is almost always the very first thought that pops into our heads. It's just human nature, that ultimate knee-jerk judgment we make from the outside looking in. But here's the thing, and it's a critical turning point for us. How do we actually shift from just judging that explosion to, really understanding the internal mind behind it? The module clearly doesn't want us stuck in that place of reactionary frustration. Instead, it challenges us to totally pivot. We need to move away from that external judgment and toward a structured, empathetic exploration of what's actually happening inside that person's reality. Basically, we've got to stop staring at the blast radius and start looking really closely at the fuse. So, how do we get there? The module gives us a really clear roadmap with 3 specific focus areas. First, understanding self-perception. Second, analyzing cognition during an episode. And third, analyzing the behavior during that episode. Having this exact framework is a total game changer because it allows us to actually study the mechanics of the explosion instead of just covering our ears and reacting to the noise. I want to pause for a second and really dwell on this one phrase straight from the text, how these individuals perceive themselves. This is massive. Why? Because there's this huge, totally invisible gap between what an outburst looks like to us on the outside and what that person is actually experiencing in that exact moment. We might see someone acting super aggressive and completely out of control, right? But in their own internal mirror, they probably see themselves as being fiercely attacked, cornered, or in literal acute danger. Decoding that distorted self-perception is absolutely the first key to unlocking this whole puzzle. Now, what's really interesting here is the source's use of the word session. They define it as a session of emotional explosiveness, and I love that framing. It means we aren't looking at this explosiveness as some permanent personality defect or unchangeable identity. No, it's an isolated, boundaried, temporary event. A session has a clear beginning, a really messy middle, and a definitive end. By boxing it in like that, the module empowers us to step back, take a breath, and study the event clinically, like an objective observer. And once we see it as this boundaried event, we can actually map out the anatomy of an episode chronologically. Step 1 is cognitive. That's the internal process, the hidden gears turning that nobody else can see. And that leads directly into step 2, behavior, the external explosiveness that, well, everyone definitely sees. The text makes this incredibly firm link. The internal cognitive trigger is directly causing the external behavioral explosion. It's a rigid sequence. You simply don't get the step 2 explosion without that step 1 internal spark happening first. But let's be real, drawing that strict boundary between what's cognitive and what's behavioral is incredibly tough to do in the heat of the moment. When you're face to face with an explosive episode, the sheer volume of the behavior, the shouting, slamming doors, or even intense withdrawal, it completely overwhelms your senses, right? It demands 100% of your attention. That is exactly why this module forces us to slow down. We have to consciously distinguish those unseen thoughts and self-perceptions from the physical actions. We have to look right past that overwhelming external behavior to see the hidden internal storm that's actually driving the whole thing. Which brings us to a crucial point, straight from the text. The module explicitly focuses on their cognitive and behavior during the session. See how the source deliberately pairs those 2 things together? It's making it crystal clear that you literally cannot understand the explosive behavior unless you unpack the cognitive state behind it first. Honestly, trying to manage or fix someone's explosive behavior without understanding their hidden cognition, well, it's like trying to turn off a blaring fire alarm without ever bothering to check what triggered the smoke sensors in the first place. It just doesn't work. So let's wrap up today's explainer with a really profound question. Now that you know about their internal self-perception and their hidden cognitive state, how will your reaction to their next session change? I really want you to think about that, because if we can actually make this empathy shift the source outlines, we completely transform our response. We go from that jarring, reactive, what's wrong with these people, to a grounded, compassionate understanding of what are they internally perceiving right now. And honestly, that one little shift in perspective, it changes absolutely everything.